I remember the day the truck stopped, not broke down, not delayed, just stopped. It was a Monday, the first one after the freeze on trade hit the news. I'd read headlines about sanctions and currency shocks while drinking my coffee, but I didn't understand any of it, not really. My husband, David, just shook his head and muttered something about more games in DC. We didn't think it mattered, not to us, not to a little farm town in Indiana where everything you need is usually 5 miles down the road or across the fence at a neighbor's. But that morning, the shelves at Porter's General were thin. By Tuesday, they were empty. And by Friday, the trucks never came back. David used to say America had a God sized immune system, that we could take any hit and keep marching forward, chest out, flags high. But when the ports shut down, when oil imports froze and factories stopped, and suddenly the US dollar wasn't the spine of the world anymore, it was like watching a giant forget how to stand up. And all at once it got quiet, not peaceful quiet, scary quiet, like the space between lightning and thunder. I remember standing in the feed aisle at Porter's, staring at a price board that hadn't updated in 2 days. A man next to me, someone I'd gone to high school with, but who'd never said more than howdy in 30 years, said, "You think this is how it starts?" I didn't know what to say, but deep in my gut, I felt it. This was the hinge moment, the one we'd read about in sci-fi books or saw in prepping shows, but never really believed would come. And it hadn't even turned violent yet. Not here, anyway. That night, the gas pumps shut down. 2 days later, the bank stopped letting people withdraw more than $60 at a time. By the end of the week, the high school turned into a food ration center. I volunteered thinking it would help me keep calm. But calm was already in short supply. That's when I started keeping the journal, not for history, just so I wouldn't forget who I was in the middle of it all. Entry, April 14th. David traded the chainsaw for 5 gallons of diesel. Said it's worth it if we can keep the generator running through the weekend. I wanted to argue, but I can't even keep the fridge cold right now. Entry, April 20th. Church was packed, not for God, for information. Nobody trusts the internet anymore. Half the stuff we see turns out to be AI junk or foreign disinfo. People come to share rumors like scripture. A woman from over in Corridon said there were riots in Louisville. Someone torched a Walmart. I believe it. Entry, April 25th. Maddie cried today because she misses milk. She's 5. I told her powdered is just as good. I lied. It tastes like chalk and guilt. We weren't starving, not yet. We had land, chickens, canned food from better years. A neighbor who used to be a mechanic and had the wisdom of 3 farmers rolled into one. We leaned on each other, learned quickly who we could trust and who to avoid when the sun dipped behind the trees. But the America we'd known, the one where everything was 2-day shipped and gas was cheap and your retirement sat somewhere safe in the cloud, that America was already gone, and most folks didn't even realize it yet. The frost came early that year, first week of October, 2 weeks ahead of the Farmer's Almanac, and nearly a month before we were ready for it. The air smelled like burnt leaves and fear, not the kind you scream about, the kind that settles in your bones like cold, quiet dread. We lost most of the late squash and green beans. David cussed under his breath when he saw the vines sagged in silver death, but he didn't raise his voice. No one raised their voice anymore, not unless they wanted to attract the wrong kind of attention. The world hadn't ended, but it had shrunk. We no longer spoke in months or years, only next week. And will it hold? The ration line outside the school stretched around the block. Third week in a row, they'd handed out more canned peaches than a protein. A few of us traded with folks from over in Palmyra. Their kids didn't like beans, and ours didn't care for fruit syrup. We called it community resilience. But let's be honest, it was bartering, like peasants. Half of us had degrees, mortgages, smart appliances gathering dust. Now we were measuring value in chickens and salt. I caught Maddie staring at a photo one night, one of those old glossy family prints from a theme park, back when gas was cheap and jobs had benefits. She was 6 now, her curls tangled and wild, her face leaner, eyes older than they had any right to be. Was that really us? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, baby, that was before. Will it come back? I wanted to say yes, but I'd already lied about the milk and the power and the maybe next week promise I kept repeating about going to town for school supplies that didn't exist anymore. So I said maybe not, but we'll make something new. She nodded slowly. Will it be better? I didn't answer that part. Entry, October 12th. The town voted to close the roads at night, not officially, just informally. Someone stacked concrete blocks at the old county line. Sheriff Jenkins says it's precautionary. I think it's fear. Entry, October 14th. Got word from someone in Seymour that gangs are moving along the I-65 corridor, not the Mad Max kind, organized. Ex-military, maybe. Taking supplies, offering protection. We locked up the tool shed tonight. Entry, October 17th. 3 strangers came down from the north. 1 woman, 2 men, said they were headed for Kentucky looking for a commune that's letting people in. Doc Keller talked to them, said they looked healthy, polite, but nobody invited them to stay. The first frost was a warning, not just from the weather, but from the world itself, that the time of assumptions was over, that the fences we once saw as property lines were now borders, and that the old dream of recovery, of getting back to normal, was dead and buried beneath the brittle, frozen vines in our backyard. David and I sat by candlelight one night listening to the silence. It was a different kind of quiet than spring, heavier, darker. You think the country holds together? He asked me. I didn't answer right away, just stared at the dancing flame between us. I think we do, I said, but the country, it's already splitting, just not loud enough yet for folks to hear it break. We went to bed with jackets on, Maddie curled between us, warm as a coal, and somewhere outside the wind shifted. The frost would return, but so would something else. It was just after 9 p.m. when we heard it. 3 knocks, not frantic, not gentle, just deliberate, like whoever was out there knew we were home and didn't care if we wanted to be left alone. David was up before I could stop him, already reaching for the old 3006. We kept behind the pantry door. He hadn't fired it in months, maybe years. But now, the way he cradled it in his arms told me he'd been rehearsing this moment in his head since the first truck stopped rolling. Maddie stirred on the couch where she'd fallen asleep under 3 layers of quilts. I slid next to her, pressing a finger to my lips. Her eyes were wide and silent. She understood more than most adults these days. There was another knock, then a voice. Evening, name's Harlan Briggs. We don't mean trouble. I peeked through the slit in the curtains. 3 of them, same pattern as the last group that passed through weeks ago. 2 men, rough-looking, patchy coats, homemade armor strapped over their clothes. The third, the one who spoke, was older, clean-shaven, long duster jacket, mismatched gloves. His voice was calm, rehearsed, like a salesman who used to sell things with barcodes instead of threats. David stepped outside, just like that. I wanted to scream at him, "Don't go alone," but my voice caught, not out of fear, but because deep down I knew the rules had changed. You couldn't call the cops anymore. There was no cavalry. We were it. They talked in low tones near the edge of the porch. I couldn't hear much, but I caught words. Trade, safe passage, rations. Harlan didn't beg. He offered. Said they'd just left a burned-out township near Salem. Said there was a group roaming the back highways, looting homes, posing as relief. Said they weren't those people. "We're just trying to make it same as you." David came back in. "They've got medicine, antibiotics," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "We don't need antibiotics," I said. "They're not asking to come in, just trade. Said they're headed south by morning." That night, we gave up 2 jars of honey and a rusted propane tank for a satchel of gauze, 3 vacuum-sealed antibiotic packs, and, to my surprise, a weatherproof deck of playing cards. "Best thing for long nights," Harlan said before tipping his hat and disappearing down the road. We watched until their silhouettes vanished past the tree line. Entry, October 21st. David says we made the right call, that it's better to make friends, even if they're strangers. I want to believe him, but part of me wonders what we taught Maddie, to be kind or to bargain with ghosts. Entry, October 23rd. The Jacksons lost their goats, all 5. Gate left open, maybe, or maybe not. They said they saw tracks, big ones, not hooved. Entry, October 26th. Bruno left town, packed up what he could carry, and said he was heading west. "There's a commune in Illinois," he said, "taking families, if you've got skills." I didn't ask what kind, not my business. Winter was pressing in now. The trees looked like bones. The sky hung low and gray like a lid screwed tight on the world. Every sound outside made us flinch. Every knock, whether on wood or in our dreams, felt like the beginning of something dangerous. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were calculating who to trust, what to give, when to say yes, and when to lock the door and pray they walk away. Maddie asked me that night, "Are those men coming back?" I pulled her close. "I don't know. Do we want them to?" I didn't answer, but I lay awake for a long time wondering the same thing. The first time we saw them fall from the sky, we thought it was war. Streaks of burning metal tearing through the night, moving too slow for missiles and too bright for planes. At least a dozen arcing tails all within a few minutes, painting fire across the stars. Maddie called them angels. David said, "That's not natural." And I just stood there on the back porch clutching a dish towel like a weapon, unable to breathe. We didn't know what they were, not then, but we knew something had changed. The old weather radio squawked awake the next morning, one of the few voices still left that didn't belong to rumor or panic. Object confirmed down across multiple Midwest sectors. Not military, I repeat, not military. Possible satellite deorbits due to sustained grid loss in key regions. We pieced together what we could from static, shortwave chatter, and that weird guy with the antenna farm on Route 19 who everyone used to ignore. Apparently they weren't bombs, just satellites. Thousands of them, the kind that had powered our GPS, our comms, our everything. When the global system stopped sinking, they lost guidance and started falling one by one, like stars being shot out of the sky. Entry November 2nd. One of them landed in Jackson's Westfield. Not a full satellite, just a chunk, blackened, twisted, still warm when we got there. David says it might be worth something. I say, we don't touch it. Something about it feels like a grave. Entry November 4th. Saw another fall last night over the lake this time. Whole sky lit up blue. We stayed up just watching it burn. There's awe in that kind of fear, the beautiful kind, the kind that reminds you how small you are. Entry November 6th. Shortwave radio buzzed with a message from Michigan. They're calling it starfall. Power grids are crashing for good. Anything still running is manual now. No more launches, no more links. World's going dark. It was strange what the loss of satellites did to people. You'd think we'd already adapted, living without cell towers, without internet, without 2-day shipping. But there was something different about seeing the sky failing. We'd been trained, without even knowing it, to believe in the sky. That satellites were eyes, that the cloud was safety, that somewhere someone was still watching, still coordinating, still pulling the strings of the modern world. When the sky started falling, it felt like God had shut off the lights. That week, David built a signal pole on the barn roof. He and Maddie painted it sky blue, topped it with a solar-powered lamp, and set it to flash a slow pulse every night. Why? I asked. So someone out there knows we're still here. He didn't say who, but it made me cry anyway. We started getting strangers again, drifters mostly. Some lost, some lying, some just tired of walking. They always looked up at that blue blinking light with wide eyes, like it meant something. Sometimes I think it did. One night, Maddie asked me, if the stars are falling, where do they go? I told her the truth. They burn up, pieces fall to earth, some vanish completely. She thought about that for a long time. Then, do we?